Imagine this, a boundless ocean, its color merging with the azure sky. On the horizon, a luxurious white yacht comes into view, carrying newlyweds on their honeymoon. It seems like the perfect picture of paradise, where everything should be as flawless as a glass of champagne at sunset. He is a man deeply in love with his wife, an experienced diver with a clear vision of their future together. She is a delicate and sweet girl who has just taken on a new surname, Mrs. Watson. Everything looks wonderful, going according to plan. But there's a catch, not every story has a happy ending. Especially when the protagonist's mind is not on love and promises, but on a hefty $200,000 insurance policy and an unfathomable attraction to the depths of the sea. The dive had a romantic beginning, but there's one nuance, only he resurfaced, while she remained lying on the bottom, becoming part of the underwater landscape, beautiful, cold, and lifeless. A female corpse. Young. On a honeymoon. With a diver husband who lost sight of her for a moment. No cameras. No witnesses. No data from the dive computers. The story starts to crack. And him. He emerged to the surface. Slowly. As if in no hurry. As if waiting for something. This is how the story begins. A story of love, fear, money, and the silent abyss. A tale in which even a dead body speaks louder than a living witness. Welcome to the honeymoon, where instead of tender kisses there are bubbles of air, and instead of passion, there is cold calculation. Harry Stempler stepped aboard the ship, Spoilsport, intending to dive into the depths of the Pacific Ocean with his wife to see the remains of a vessel that had sunk back in 1911. As they descended, the couple took numerous photos. When they reached the site of the wreck, Harry's wife posed, and he captured her against the backdrop of the underwater ruins. They had no idea that this very photo would soon go viral on the internet. And not at all because of the picturesque scenery. After taking the picture, Harry noticed something unusual in the distance. Another diver. At first glance, nothing strange, but this person was completely motionless. They were lying face up on the ocean floor, showing no signs of life. Initially, Harry thought it was some kind of bad joke or an attempt to attract attention, but minutes passed, and the figure remained still. Then he saw another scuba diver, a man purposefully swimming towards the one lying down. It might have seemed that he was going to help. However, instead, he simply swam up, lingered for a few seconds beside the body, and then calmly headed for the surface. Leaving the lifeless figure on the bottom, Harry had no idea that it was a woman, a wife, a bride. She was on her honeymoon, and the one who had just left her in the abyss was her own husband. They had been married for only 11 days. This heavy, tangled, and tragic incident became known as the story of Tina Watson, a honeymoon that turned into a catastrophe. Could a husband really descend to the ocean floor to get rid of his wife? What could have prompted him to do such a thing, and in the presence of other divers? The answers are not as obvious as they might seem at first glance. Christina May, better known as Tina, was born on February 13, 1977, in West Germany. When she was just a baby, her biological parents gave her up. She spent the first years of her life in a German orphanage. In January 1980, Tommy and Cindy Thomas from the United States officially adopted Tina. Their family settled in Walker County, Alabama. Later, they moved several times, first to Louisiana, and then finally settled in Birmingham. Tina had a close and warm relationship with her adoptive parents. It was a loving and caring family. As Tommy and Cindy recalled, their daughter was a cheerful, kind girl with a great love for nature. She was often described as a bright and pleasant person. However, at a young age, Tina was diagnosed with PSVT, a rare heart abnormality resembling arrhythmia. Although this condition was not a direct threat to her life, it caused chest pain, rapid heartbeat, and shortness of breath. The ailment significantly complicated the girl's daily life. After graduating from high school, Tina enrolled at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. During that time, she was engaged to a man named Scott. But it was then that Gabe Watson entered her life. He fell head over heels in love with Tina at first sight. Relatives and friends described him as a cheerful, sociable, and open guy. Gabe immediately started seeking the girl's affection, even though he knew she was already engaged to someone else. Tina did not reciprocate his advances, but this did not deter Gabe in the slightest. He was determined to continue his attempts. Meanwhile, the relationship between Tina and Scott began to deteriorate. Rumors had it that the girl's parents did not approve of her choice of fiancé, which ultimately led to the breakup of the engagement. Some time later, Tina found herself at a New Year's Eve party, where she met Gabe again. And this time, she agreed to go on a date with him. From January 2001, they started dating. After obtaining her higher education, Tina got a job as a manager in a clothing store. Gabe worked as a sales representative in his father's packaging company. He had one great passion, diving. Having a rescue diver certification, he often went diving in lakes, especially favoring Oak Mountain Park. Gabe insisted that Tina also take a training course. Despite her poor health and lack of particular interest, she agreed. Although the girl had a minor surgery at the age of 24, her parents were still terribly worried about their daughter's diving hobby. Despite everything, in October 2003, Tina completed her training and received the appropriate certification. By the time Tina finished her diving training, she and Gabe had been dating for 3 years. However, something about him caused concern for the girl's parents. When Gabe approached Tommy to ask for permission to marry Tina, he treated it with great caution. Together with his wife Cindy, they believed that Gabe was too self-centered, did not show enough attention and care for their daughter, and had problems communicating with her. In the end, Tina's father refused to give Gabe his blessing for the marriage. However, formally, the young couple did not need parental consent. Gabe just wanted to show respect for his bride's family. Some time passed, and on April 20, 2003, Gabe proposed to Tina, and she said yes. Her parents were shocked by this news, but they could no longer influence their daughter's decision. She was an adult, and if she decided to tie her life to Gabe, it was impossible to stop her. 5 months after the engagement, Tina came to her parents and voiced a strange request. She wanted to increase the insurance amount in case of her death and designate Gabe as the sole beneficiary. Her father was stunned by such a request and suggested postponing this conversation until after the wedding and honeymoon, as the bride and groom were already immersed in wedding worries. On October 11, 2003, Tina Thomas became Tina Watson. The couple was on cloud 9, and Gabe had prepared an unforgettable trip for them, an underwater adventure. It was not the kind of vacation Tina had dreamed of, but Gabe insisted on a trip to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. In the end, she agreed. It is worth noting that Gabe already had 55 dives under his belt, while Tina had only dived 5 times, and those were in freshwater. Diving in the sea is a completely different level of complexity. Gabe wanted to descend to the wreckage of the ship SS Yongala, which sank in 1911. The vessel lay at a depth of 30 meters, and Tina had previously dived to a maximum of 9 meters. It was almost 4 times deeper than what she was used to. Despite all the doubts and fears, the couple packed their bags and set off for Australia. They spent the first week in Sydney, getting acquainted with the city. Then they moved to Townsville in Queensland, from where they boarded a ship called Spoilsport, which was to take them to the dive site. This route was considered challenging even for experienced divers. The water was unpredictable, the depth significant, so before diving, it was suggested to undergo a briefing and make the first dive under the supervision of a specialist. But Tina and Gabe declined this offer. They were convinced that they could handle it on their own. Gabe, being a certified rescue diver, was calm and believed that everything was under control. Before the dive, he insisted that more weight be added to Tina's vest. He claimed that without the extra weight, she would not be able to descend properly. After all the preparations, they entered the water, but literally within a few minutes, Gabe surfaced. Alone. Without Tina. This happened around 10:30 a.m. on October 22, 2003. According to Gabe, during the descent, he noticed a look of panic on Tina's face. She began to wave her arms chaotically and accidentally knocked off his air regulator and mask. While he was fixing his equipment, Tina was already sinking to the bottom. Motionless. Gabe claimed that the underwater current was too strong, and he could not reach his wife. He said it was easier to surface and call for help. And this was coming from a certified rescue diver, whose direct responsibility is to save people in such situations. He also admitted that he had never undergone special training in lifting victims to the surface. About 10 minutes passed before a diving instructor named Wade dove into the water and pulled out Tina's lifeless body. She was transferred to another boat called Jazz 2. By that time, the girl was already showing no signs of life. Fortunately, there was a doctor on board who immediately began cardiopulmonary resuscitation. He fought for Tina's life for 40 minutes. But all efforts were in vain. Tina was gone. For everyone present, it was a real shock. Just recently, she had been full of life, and now everything had ended. It was their honeymoon, and just days after the wedding, Tina died underwater. If not for the persistence of her father, Tommy, who decided to personally go to Australia and talk to the police, the story could have ended at this stage. His actions became a turning point in the investigation. Tommy did not give up until he started getting answers to questions about his daughter's sudden and mysterious death. By that time, even the police began to have suspicions. In July 2004, Tina's case was reclassified from an accident to intentional murder. During the interrogation of witnesses, numerous inconsistencies were revealed in Gabe's testimonies, which he constantly changed. Investigators also studied data from Tina and Gabe's diving computers. These devices record the duration of the dive, depth, and number of ascents. Gabe claimed that he quickly surfaced to call for help. However, his computer showed something completely different. A slow ascent. As if he was deliberately wasting time. These suspicions only intensified with each new fact. Data from Tina's computer confirmed that she did not have sufficient training for such a complex dive. Her experience was minimal, and the depth and strong current turned this dive into an extremely dangerous adventure. Experts suggest that Gabe could have deliberately cut off Tina's air supply, possibly during an underwater embrace, and then turned it back on when he realized she had lost consciousness. Due to the relaxation of the jaw muscles, a certain amount of water still entered Tina's lungs. This gave grounds to classify her death as drowning. Some experienced divers claimed that even with the air supply cut off, Tina had a chance to surface. However, she lacked experience and probably just panicked. What really happened underwater is known only to the two of them. However, Gabe had already managed to establish himself as a person whose words should not be trusted. It later became known that at the time of obtaining his diving certificate, he had only 15 ocean dives, although he claimed to have considerable experience. In fact, Gabe was a novice scuba diver. Tommy also informed the police about the mysterious events occurring at Tina's grave. The flowers brought by family and friends constantly disappeared. Soon, video surveillance was installed there. What the camera recorded did not come as a surprise to investigators. In the footage was Gabe himself, collecting all the flowers and notes left on Tina's grave and throwing them in the trash. When asked by the police about such behavior, Gabe replied that he was allegedly respecting the wishes of his late wife, who did not like flashy plastic compositions. In 2007, Gabe achieved the exhumation of Tina's body and reburial of her remains in a plot registered in his name. At the same time, he did not install a headstone on her new grave for 2 years. Only in 2009, at the request of Tina's father, a memorial plaque appeared at the burial site. But even after that, Gabe did not stop. Tommy asked to return his daughter's personal belongings in order to preserve her memory, but he was refused. Only through the court was it possible to obtain a ban on further removal of items from Tina's grave. After all these events, the Australian authorities turned to law enforcement in the state of Alabama, and even more disturbing details of Gabe and Tina's relationship came to light. Back in college, Gabe persistently pursued Tina, even though he knew she was dating another guy. When they started dating, Gabe turned out to be not at all the romantic and caring partner he seemed at first glance. They often had quarrels. Once, Gabe even threw a piece of pizza at Tina. He was pathologically jealous and showed aggression. During the periods when the couple broke up and Tina dated someone else, Gabe would harass her, forcing her to return to him. These facts became the basis for Gabe's extradition to Australia. He was charged with committing a serious crime, but he agreed to return only on the condition that the wording be softened to unintentional infliction of harm. The court found him guilty and sentenced him to 4.5 years in prison. However, Gabe spent only 18 months behind bars. Later, at the request of the American side, Gabe Watson's case was sent for retrial to Alabama. At the same time, he was given guarantees that the death penalty would not be applied even if new evidence of his guilt was available. As soon as Gabe was released in Australia, he was arrested again. The retrial took place on February 13, 2012. However, this time the prosecution was unable to provide information about Gabe's suspicious behavior after his wife's death, as well as about the insurance policy. This significantly weakened the position of the prosecution. As a result, the court found the available evidence insufficient and acquitted Gabe Watson. Shortly after that, he remarried a woman named Kim and moved into a house in the city of Hoover, Alabama. The same house that he inherited after Tina's death. In essence, this man became the cause of his own wife's death, appropriated her property, and started a new life with another woman under the same roof with the ghosts of the past. The main question that still remains unanswered is why, for what reason? Tina was a good, loving wife who supported her husband in everything. She mastered diving for his sake, agreed to a trip that did not really appeal to her. And as a result, he coldly took her life. Tina's parents never saw justice. By court order, Gabe was forever forbidden to approach their daughter's grave. But while he continues to enjoy life, they are forced to bear the burden of losing their only child, a loss that has neither explanation nor justice. This story has no catharsis, no final shot, no punishment that would set everything in its place. There is only him, Gabe Watson. Free, remarried, with a house that came to him at the cost of his former wife's life. With a new beginning built on the ruins of someone else's fate. And then there are her parents, aged, lonely, with an urn of ashes instead of a daughter and a stack of court papers instead of hope. There is a grave that Gabe no longer has the right to approach. Although this did not stop him before, he would come, tear off the flowers, and throw them away. As if memory is garbage, and the pain of loss is a cheap theatrical performance. He claimed that he could not save her. He, a certified rescue diver who surfaced while she was slowly drowning, as if checking to see if everything was going according to the planned scenario. And then there were the flowers, the insurance, the impassive expression on his face in the courtroom, and a new wife. He walks through life as if everything that happened is just an annoying delay in the schedule. And, it seems he won. He was not convicted of murder. He did not receive real punishment for betrayal. He did not answer to those who trusted him. To the one who went underwater for his sake. Who in her final moments looked at the sunbeams through the glass of her mask, and not through a wedding veil, as she had dreamed. Now he just lives. Lives as if the death of his beloved is not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.